Hello, my name is Beth Hines. I'm so excited for another episode of the Learning from Legends series in honor of ASHA's 100th anniversary. Today, I'm joined by my co-host, Christina Liem, an SLP colleague from Loma Linda, California. Here are the financial and non-financial disclosures. I am the host of Keys for SLPs podcast and receive compensation from Speech Therapy PD. Christina Liem is the co-host for this podcast and receives compensation from Speech Therapy PD. Dr. Yvette Hyter received compensation from Speech Therapy PD for her previous presentations. She receives an honorarium from Speech Therapy PD for participating as a podcast guest. Dr. Lilly Cheng receives an honorarium from Speech Therapy PD for participating as a podcast guest. She receives royalties from the sales of her books and online offerings. And today our learning objectives are: 1, to explain how multicultural issues have evolved through the years. 2, explain key research that has impacted multicultural issues in SLP. And 3, describe the future direction of research and practice allowing for multicultural differences. And now let's meet our SLP legends in multicultural issues. Dr. Yvette Hyter, PhD, CCC, SLP, BCS, CL, and Dr. Lilly Li-Rong Cheng, PhD.
All right, so Dr. Yvette Hyter is a professor emerita at Western Michigan University. She focuses on trauma-responsive and culturally responsive practices and has co-authored a textbook on culturally responsive methods and edited a text on language research and post-traumatic stress. She owns Language and Literacy Practices, LLC, offering an institute for child trauma and communication. She is a founding member and co-managing editor of the Journal of Critical Study of Communication and Disability, an open access journal focused on critical science, equity, and social justice. Dr. Cheng is a founding director of the Chinese Cultural Center and was a professor in the School of Speech, Language, and Hearing Sciences at San Diego State University. She is the past chair of the American Speech Language Hearing Association Multicultural Issues Board and the past president of the International Association of Communication Sciences and Disorders. She served on the editorial board of several major professional journals and has published numerous articles and books. She is a frequent keynote speaker on the topics of neurodiversity, cultural diversity, East meets West, language learning, and language disorders. She holds visiting professorships in multiple universities. Her honors and awards include ASHA Honors, ASHA Fellow, ASHA Multicultural Contributions, and Diversity Award from the California Speech and Hearing Association. Dr. Cheng has also served as a consultant for Sesame Street and Tiffany & Company. Welcome, Dr. Hyter and Dr. Cheng. We're so excited to take a few minutes to get to know you a little bit better and learn about your career, research, contributions to our field, and perspectives on multicultural issues. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, we are so happy to have you both here and so honored to have you as legends joining us. So before we dive into our topic, just for fun, can you tell us something about yourself that people may not know?
You want me to start?
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah. People may not know that I am a historian. I'm very interested in the Silk Road going from China to the Middle East and from China across the seas through the Arabian Sea all the way to Africa. The Chinese landed in Kenya many hundreds of years ago and also landed in Indonesia, Malaysia, and so on and so forth, creating the Peranakan culture and people, creating multiple areas of contact. So I am fascinated by the maritime Silk Road as well as the land Silk Road.
Wow.
That's
That's
fascinating.
fascinating.
So interesting.
Yeah. Something that people may not know about me is that I'm a violinist. I've been playing since I was 9. So that's what, 57, 56 or 7 years or something like that. Um, and I'm very competitive, not with the violin, but in sports. I've always done competitive sports until recently. Yep.
Mm.
Oh, that's wonderful. I love the violin. It's one of my
Me
favorite
too.
instruments.
Mm.
So,
Dr.
so
Hyter.
wonderful for you.
Yes, Dr. Hyter, I actually play the violin too.
Oh,
Yeah,
nice.
I
Mm.
started when I was I think 6 or 7, and that's amazing. Do you play with an orchestra? I'm just curious, or do
Well,
you play for fun?
no, right now I'm preparing for a concert that I've been preparing for a while, and I keep putting it off, feeling like I'm not ready, right? So I'm not playing with an orchestra. I would love to play with a community orchestra or something like that soon, but I'm not doing that yet.
Well, it sounds like you have great aspirations. I would be scared to put on a solo recital at this point. That's awesome. All right. So, well, I have a question. Could, and it doesn't matter who wants to start, but could you tell us about your journey? What led you to speech language pathology, maybe your early career, and why you chose your area of interest? And then also maybe also what eventually led you to become an ASHA fellow?
Yvette, go first.
Okay.
Mm.
I knew I wanted to be a speech language clinician when I was in 5th grade. I went to a school, it was a middle school career day, and the librarian, because I do all kinds of, I was always into words and puzzles and making up languages. And so she directed me to speech language pathology. And I went home and told my parents, I want to be a speech language pathologist when I grow up. And as my parents did with all of us, they made it possible for me to get experience. So over the summer, I was a candy striper in the hospital working with a speech language clinician who was uh, serving or providing services to a child in a coma. And my job was to read to that child every day. So I came in, I grabbed a book and I read. One day I came in and the whole department was abuzz, and they had me come into the room and I said something. So the child had come out of his coma, but he wasn't recognizing anyone except when I came in and spoke to him, he recognized my voice. He recognized me. Um, and that just sealed the deal. I was like, yes, this is what I was going to do. And so I worked in schools and hospitals, but I had a kind of a bad experience where I was seeing children who were economically depressed from economically depressed backgrounds, and they're working on a team, and one member of the team kept diagnosing them as mentally, the R word, we can't say that anymore, but it was in the 1980s. That's what mentally, mental challenges or mentally impaired now, I think is what we would say. But, and I knew that that wasn't right. And I was going to leave. I was trying to fight that within the system. I had the support of my immediate supervisor, but it was just so stressful that I just felt like I can't do this job. I can't be a speech language clinician anymore. So I went to my last ASHA, and someone talked me into going to a MC Square meeting, Multicultural Concerns Committee, and at ASHA, and there was this Dr. Dunn talking about how the field needed more faculty of color and faculty who were concerned about issues that impacted children of color and children who were speaking languages other than English and children who were impoverished. And I just felt like he was saying, Yvette, like Yvette, Yvette, he wasn't, but I felt like I was being called into that.
Wow.
And I decided to stay in the field. Spent the rest of that ASHA not going to any conferences, but talking to everybody that had PhD behind their name. And then I just feel like my role in this field from the 1990s on is to change the way that business is done, to change the way we provide services and support and collaborate with families and work in schools. So that's my mission. And how I became a fellow is that one of my long-term mentors, Dr. Nikki Nelson, nominated me. She asked me if she could nominate me. And then same thing with ASHA Honors. Dr. Gloria Weddington approached me, asked if she could nominate me. And I'm indebted to them. I'm grateful that they saw that I was worthy of that nomination, and I was awarded both of those.
Wow, that is incredible. Thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
Your own personal experience. Oh man, and the story of the little child that you were reading to. We reckon. Oh, wow.
Yeah, that really is an amazing story.
Yeah.
And how fortunate are we as a profession that you attended that ASHA and attended that discussion, and that led you to where you are now and your contributions to our field. So thank you for your contributions, and thank you for
Sure.
sticking with it.
Thank you.
Yes. Dr. Chung, would you tell us about your journey?
Yeah. A different route, but we arrive at the same place at the end. Yeah, I grew up in Taiwan, so I have never had one moment of my life being a monolingual person. I've always been multilingual, multicultural, always been from birth, actually from inception. So I realized how important it was as a child to be able to speak multiple languages to different people. From Taiwan, people, almost all of the people in Taiwan can speak at least 2 or 3 languages. So monolingualism was never a reality for me. Multilingualism was. And as a child, I went to my friend's house, and her sister, older sister, was at home peeling potatoes and beans. And I said to my friend, why isn't she in school? And her mother told us that when the young girl, a Down's girl, went to school for the first day, her clothes was torn. Her ribbon was taken away. Her pencils were broken. She was bullied. Her mother wanted to protect her, so her mother never let her out of her sight and never let her go to school. And I look at this Down's sister, older sister of my friend, and I said, this is not right. She should be in school. Should be allowed to go to school. We have to do something about it. So that was the beginning of the beginning until now. So coming to the United States as a foreign student, I went to Michigan State University, Michigan. And I had a number of wonderful mentors who kept encouraging me to move on and not to worry about my look, my accent, or whatever. And in my mind, I never really understood. Everyone speaks with 1 or 2 or 3 accents. So what is wrong with accent? Why do I need to reduce my accent? Why do I need to reduce my accent as if I needed to reduce my weight? I couldn't understand that. So with the help of ASHA and ASHA leaders, including Catherine Butler, David Yoder, so on and so forth, they all encouraged me to be more involved with ASHA. So I think that was the beginning. In 1984, I began to really get myself involved with ASHA. And then eventually I was nominated to the ASHA Fellow and then to the ASHA Honors. I never really questioned my existence, but I did question ASHA's position on multilingualism and multiculturalism. So I kept asking those questions, and those questions help us to establish the API caucus, the Asian Pacific Islander caucus. You know, and understood the multicultural issues board, and also the Office of Minority Concerns. But I think we have evolved. We have evolved. ASHA is now going to be 100. We have evolved. We have done many good things for people. I'm very proud to be a member of ASHA and a member of the ASHA Honors and member of the ASHA Fellows.
Oh, and we are so honored to have you with us tonight, and honored that you have contributed so much to ASHA throughout your career.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, can't wait to hear more.
Yes, yes. Okay, so let's dive into multicultural issues. How have multicultural issues, and of course we only have an hour for this, right? So this is a big issue. So we're going to be talking highlights here, but how have multicultural issues evolved in the field of speech language pathology through the years, and especially throughout your careers?
Well, I think for me, multicultural issues has expanded, right? So when I was coming on the scene in the 1980s, 84 was my first job. I think 3 years later, ASHA passed, or there was a position statement about the requirement to include multicultural issues as part of the coursework, which didn't become required to be added until I think the 1990, but 87, there was this paper that was written about that. And so, but the definition of multiculturalism has expanded since that time, since my understanding. And so it not only includes, various ethnicities, and languages, but also neurodiversity, different genders, different ways of thinking. So I think it has expanded from when it was first being discussed, or when I first became aware of it being discussed in the discipline. What do you think?
Yeah, I think I was thinking about 1984. And 1984 was a very important year. I think I brought ASHA leaders to Taiwan in 1984. By the way, I grew up never knowing that there was such a discipline, because in Taiwan there was no such discipline. So in 1984, a number of ASHA leaders and myself, we went to Taiwan, and we were able to get to the media, the newspapers and the televisions, to tell them that there are people who have this fluent language. There are people whose voices crack up. There are people, in those days, we didn't talk a lot about swallowing, I have to be honest with you. But there are people who suffered a stroke. There are also, we didn't talk a whole lot about autism either. But we were able to put speech, language, and hearing front and center, in front of a group of people in Taiwan. And that began the genesis of the Taiwan Speech, Language, and Hearing Association. Because we needed people. But who were the members, the initial members? They were mostly teachers, special education teachers, doctors, physiatrists, otolaryngologists, and so on, psychologists, child psychologists. They were helping us to get a profession together. So that was 1984. 1987, Yvette, I wrote the first book about assessing children with Asian language backgrounds. And that was many moons ago. So you mentioned those 2 years. But during the first decade of my work with ASHA, we were trying to make sure that speaking Black English is a right, human right. Speaking Chinese influenced English is also a human right. Speaking Chinese is a human right. Speaking Swahili is a human right. Not everyone speaks English. but there are immigrants, migrants, refugees who came to this country, and their rights were not being recognized because they couldn't speak English. So from English as a foreign language to English as a new language, those concepts became more available, I think, in the 90s and in the year 2000.
Wow.
I'm pretty sure I had that book, Lily.
Yeah. It's a red cover.
Yes, yes.
Chinese red.
Yeah.
I love it.
Mm.
So, speaking of books and research, when considering multicultural issues, what pivotal research in your experience has significantly impacted treatment and assessment in speech-language pathology?
Do you want to take that first? Or I mean, I can.
Yeah, you can take it. Yeah.
Okay.
No problem.
So this research that it's a recent article that came out, and it hasn't significantly changed, but I think it's a spark. And I think people are starting to pay more attention to this line of thinking. And it was published in 2024 by Vishnu Nair, Maria Rosa Brea, and Betty Yu. And what they're doing is they were focused on decolonizing, the name of the paper is Decolonizing Speech-Language Pathology, Critical Foundational Concepts for Research, Pedagogy, and Practice. And really the article examines or just, problematizes the way that knowledge and speech-language pathology, I don't even like to use pathology anymore, but the way that the field has conceptualized and constructed um, uh, uh, concepts and ways of practice that are based on a very European identity and conceptual frame. And so it necessary because of the way speech-language pathology or speech-language hearing sciences was birthed and how it has kind of the pillars that it stands on, a lot of the practices might be ableist or not deficit-based instead of strength-based, or like, like telling people that, they need to modify or change their accent when in actuality, why? Why are only some, if accent modification is really important, why are only some accents needing to be modified? We all have one, as Dr. Chung said earlier, right? We all have an accent. And we all have a dialect, right? We all speak a variation of a language. So I think that line of thinking and that paper for me seems to be a very important one. I have several, but that's one of the ones that I think is to watch for, because that line of thinking seems like it's growing in the discipline among some groups. Maybe it hasn't, not everybody, but there are more and more people who are questioning our typical practices and where they come from and how are they practices that are inequitable, not necessarily deliberately, but inequitable nonetheless.
And can you, just for our participants, can you just give us the name of that paper one more time?
Sure. Decolonizing Speech-Language Pathology, Critical Foundational Concepts for Research, Pedagogy, and Practice. It's published in the Journal of Critical Study of Communication and Disability, and second volume, can't remember what the second number is for. Anyway,
Issue?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
I just had a blank. Okay, yeah, second volume, second issue, and it came out in 2024.
2024. Okay, thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you. And we're doing pretty good on time. So let's hear from Dr. Chung, and then maybe if you want to maybe think about another article you might want to refer us to.
Yeah.
Okay, Dr. Chung, what do you think?
Yeah, actually, I just wanted to share the two books that I wrote, that I read a long time ago. I would like speech-language pathologists and audiologists to at least know, if they haven't read those two books. One was written by Margaret Mead, an anthropologist, coming of age in Samoa, going to the island of Samoa, understanding the coming of age in Samoa, talking about human development, cultural development, and how people develop their relationships among themselves. The other book that I think that I really want people to read is by Shirley Bryce Heath. And the book is Ways with Words, Ways
Yes.
with Words. And I thought, boy, the 3 W's, Ways with Words. Those laid the foundation many years ago about how I look at ways with words, how I look at diversity, how I look at all these things. But more recently, I myself, together with many people, got together and we wrote a small book in 2024 because I have a belief that no story about me without me. So the book is about me, with me. And the book is 15 people, mostly from speech-language pathology, either in the field or working with the field, from individual who is deaf, mother who's taking care of an AS child, and people with cerebral palsy and who became a speech pathologist, etc. All 15 of us wrote a book together, each very small, but each very powerful. No story about me without me. The title of the book is Becoming an Exceptional API Leader. And this book is from Amazon. And the stories, I think, will tell you how I look at my professional work and how I see the future going. So again, no story about me without me, raising our silent voices.
Oh, I love that. And the title is Becoming an Exceptional API Leader.
API Leader, yeah.
I can't wait to read those books.
Yeah, wonderful.
And the article
Uh-huh.
as well. Dr. Hyter, did you have another article that you were thinking?
Sure, I have another article, but I was just going to say this real quick. The Ways with Words book really blew my mind too.
Right.
I read it in 1990 when I was starting my doctorate program. And it was just, I don't know, it was just amazing. It's an ethnographic study, 10 years. I think it was over 10 years.
Over 10
But
years.
it reads like a novel, right? It's just very informative, but very easy to read and enjoyable. It's like a page turner almost, It's a great, I think, introduction into thinking about the mass diversity and the need for equity in the area of linguistics, language and communication.
Yeah, I have had the honor and the privilege to speak to Shirley Bryce Heath. I met her, I talked to her, we invited her to our campus, and it was great. But Ways with Words, I'm so glad, Yvette, that you talk about this. Nowadays, we are so fast in our acquisition of information and knowledge. We click and we get something. But that book, you take it, you take one page at a time, one line at a time, and you felt like you were part of the people in that book.
Exactly.
And so if you have not read that book, Ways with Words, it is about time that we all read the book. Not only that, but it gave me such a strong feeling of the concept of village. The concept that it takes a village came actually from books like that. Okay.
Yeah.
So please, Ways with Words.
Yeah.
It's in my Amazon cart.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great. Do I still have time for that one more article?
Yes, you do.
So this is actually a book chapter written by Reem Khamis and Randanzo. I don't know the second author's first name, starts with an M, but what they did is that they questioned the validity is what's coming out of my mouth, but that's not exactly the right word. But they questioned the way evidence-based practice is being used and said that it has the potential to um, to fall into the trap of being racist because, or to read their words, I'm just going to say, this is a framework adopted by the American Speech Language Hearing Association for this field. And the authors argue that a shift from a medically based, evidence-based practice model to a pluralistic evidence-based practice model would better serve the needs of Black, Indigenous people of color with communication impairments in the current social political landscape. And so what they were saying is that, the three pillars of evidence-based practice, one of those is the professional knowledge of the clinician. But if that professional knowledge is restricted or very compressed and not aware, not culturally responsive, then you have that piece has the potential to have a more negative outcome for the families and the individuals that we are collaborating with in their care than if that piece isn't there, if they're not culturally responsive. And when I read that chapter at first, it just blew my mind because I had never, even questioned those three pillars. Of course, cultural, the clinician professionalism or clinician knowledge. But when that knowledge is restricted to a very narrow lens, it becomes problematic.
Wow. Could you tell us where that chapter may be found?
It's in a book that was edited by Ramonda Horton, and it's called Critical Perspectives on Social Justice and Speech-Language Pathology.
Thank
And
you.
it's a chapter in that book.
Would you say that one more time just for
Sure.
a little
So the
slow?
name of the chapter, it was written by Reem Kamis and Randazzo, deconstructing the three pillars of evidence-based practice to facilitate social justice work in speech, language, and hearing sciences. It's in a book that was edited by Ramonda Horton, and that book is called Critical Perspectives on Social Justice and Speech Language Pathology.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, well, looking toward the future, what further research would you like to see developed to advance multicultural issues?
Now, I would like to take that first.
Sure.
Yeah, because while my memory is fresh, I have good long-term memory, but after COVID, I have I have brain fog, so sometimes I can't remember. But while Yvette was talking, I was thinking, what made me feel so important is the notion about the global North versus the global South that we have heard from so many writers, so many wonderful leaders in our field, ASHA being 100 years old, IALP turned 100 last year. So we're talking about people, taking a whole century of developing and defining, the scope of our practice, etc. But let's turn to the global South. Global South, almost all of Africa, South Asia, lots of Asia, Pacific Islands, South America. Think about global South for a moment. Then I want to also tell you about a book by Paulo Freire. The book has
Yes.
been translated into English, and it's called Pedagogy of the Oppressed. Pedagogy of the Oppressed. The book is very important for all people to understand global North versus global South. Also to understand people from the North or from the Eurocentric point of view as being individualistic and powerful rather than global South. The world, the large part of the world, is actually collective and circular, not linear. So if you think about population-wise, Global South has a lot more people, a lot more diversity and history, thousands of languages and so on. So I hope people will get a chance to enjoy Paulo Freire. By the way, his work is known from the Global South to the Global North. Very few Global South authors have been read. Another person is Wole Soyinka. Wole Soyinka, the first ever African Nobel laureate, writing, and so Soyinka, Soyinka. So I hope people will begin to also read from the Global South. Yeah.
I think that's very important because we, a lot of our research, even that's being published, right? I think you would agree with me, Dr.
Yeah.
Chung, is that
Yeah.
is even in the ASHA journals, a lot of that what's being published is by people who are in the global north or in the minority world country, right? And something that you said brought that to my memory about the majority versus minority world country, because you were saying the global south is vast, has lots of people, and is very collective oriented. And there was this photographer who got tired of his artwork being talked about as if it was, you know, this minor kind of insignificant type of artwork. You know, this guy from India brought it, you know. And so he coined the words majority world versus minority world, kind of turning things on their head, because the minority world is the global north, right? Because a minority of the people in the world live in the global north. And so he was actually turning those terms, because usually when in the United States, when you say, another word I hate is minority, right? Is people are thinking of people of color, you know, as somehow they're the minority. But if you have a global mindset, we really are the majority, right? It's a majority. So the majority world, the majority where the majority of the people live in the world, is like the global south. And I can't remember the name of the photographer, but I'll find that. I'm sure.
Yeah, Yvette, I also wanted to say that we have also nowadays a look at the world map. And if you look at the majority world, it is the global south. Okay, if you put China and India and Africa together, okay, just those a continent and two large countries, we are 3/4 of the world. If you put Europe together, all the European countries together, all together, it does not even cover the city of Mumbai. Okay.
Even with the European continent and the North American continent, it's not the same. That's such a small,
completely.
Right. Yeah. Such a small piece of the world.
Yeah. So the ethnocentric view is, I speak English. I am powerful. Why don't you speak English? Right. That is often what I encounter. So I try to tell the world that there is a very large population, so large, south of the United States. You know, we are next to the border of Mexico, Mexico going down all the way to Panama. Yes, Panama, and all the way down to the tip of Brazil. You see the entire South America. If we talk about the Americas, we're not talking about USA or Canada. We're talking about the Americas.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, that's what it is. So I think that the shift, you know, I mentioned the word Office of Minority Concerns. That was the actual title of an office in ASHA, OMC. And clearly, in those days, there were very few persons of color working at the ASHA office or being a member of the ASHA community. But this has changed dramatically if you ask about changes over time.
When when was the Office of Minority Concerns dissolved, and what did it evolve into?
I don't think it was, maybe dissolve was not the word. I think evolve is the better word. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I think it probably in the early 90s, it changed.
Okay. It evolved. Okay. Okay.
Yeah. From MC, we still call it MC square though.
Right, that's
Yeah.
true.
Yeah. It
Yeah.
became different because many of us began to talk that we also count, okay? And people who are supposedly yellow or black, you know, the mulattoes, the mestizos, we are all people. But if you think about the number of people, sheer number, we are not the minorities. We are the majority. Yeah.
Right.
Mhm. So, as we think about your career and being ASHA fellows and having ASHA honors, what is the most significant change you have seen during your career?
Wow. I think I've been with ASHA for half a century. From the very beginning, very, very beginning, meaning my consciousness. So ASHA has been, you know, my everyday life. I think most significant thing is I talk a lot about communication as a human right. I now talk about literacy as a human right. And there are so many people who don't have education or don't have the opportunity to be educated. Literacy to me is a human right issue. So that's to me a big, I think a big push. We must look at literacy. We must be able to somehow possess the ability to use a language or two languages to think, to construct our reality. So I'm now pushing more for that. And of course, the multicultural reality has to be a reality. No matter what you say about diversity, equity, and inclusion, those are just words, but the reality is there. You know, we don't need to use those words if we don't want to, but in reality, we have to deal with the multiplicity of our reality. And I think ASHA is looking at this straight in the eye. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Have you seen the stance perhaps change during your career?
I think I would say that, let me see. I feel like that people would feel like that the stance has changed, that it has evolved. For me, and I'm speaking only for myself, it hasn't gone far enough. I would like to see us move more toward a critical frame, like thinking about looking at where is the inequity, where are the injustices, even in our own policies and practices. And then let's do something about it. Let's change it, right? Let's get rid of it, or let's modify it, or build something new. But it seems to me that we get stuck. We kind of get really comfortable in the the diversity. So, you know, there's 8%, there's been, I think in the membership survey that they do, 8% of the people who belong to ASHA are people of color. Less than that are people who speak more than one language. I think it's like 4%. I'm not sure about, but I know it's less than 8%. And so there's this real concern about the representation, that we need more people to represent. Okay. But in my mind, what we really need right now is a move away from deficit based, a move away from positivism, that's where behaviorism comes from, a move away from to a movement toward strength-based language and really doing equity and justice work in our practice. And to do that, you have to be aware that one, that it could exist, and then two, that there are things you can do about it, right? There are policies in different departments. There's one that I can talk about, I think, because I talk about it a lot when I'm doing talks, so I feel comfortable. But like the policy of GRE scores, right? GRE scores, even ETS says they shouldn't be used to determine who can, ETS, the people who develop the GRE, right? Even say it shouldn't be used to determine, it says that it's being misused the way it's being used to admit people to school, because it only gives you a glimpse into the first semester, maybe, of some learners, but not individuals of color, individuals who speak languages other than English, individuals who are impoverished, and older women returning to school. It says nothing about them, really. So, but that's a policy. And I think COVID did us a favor, right? So lots of universities stopped looking at GREs. And hopefully they didn't go back, but that's a policy that's inequitable, it's unjust. It doesn't tell us anything about someone's capacity to be a practicing clinician, a critically thinking person who can, engage with others and support, walk along with them in their work, in their transition from one ability to the next. And so I think that we get hung up, as Dr. Chung said, on the words diversity, equity, inclusion, instead of going about the business of actually doing it, right? And representation's okay, but it just isn't enough. And that's where I think that we get stuck, is worrying about how many people there are, when if we really were focused on equity, inclusion, and justice, that everybody would be included, everybody, regardless of who you are, right? And it even might be a field that's even more attractive to BIPOC community.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that I have seen a paradigm shift over this almost 4 or 5 decades, that we are now, many of us are talking about dynamic assessment. So the
Yes,
dynamic
that's true.
assessment is not just, again, it's not an ideology, because when you take a snapshot, it's static. Yeah, the GRE is a snapshot. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
But if you do a dynamic assessment, if we agree with that, then it's dynamic, it's not synchronic, but diachronic. It gives time, it gives space, it gives ways to learn. And so all the time, I'm thinking, it's not just how we look at assessing a child or looking at a child in a dynamic environment and look at his or her language. But if you look at the family dynamics, and you also look at potential candidates into our profession, that if you only use GRE or GPA, as these very static numbers, we are not looking at the dynamic process. So hopefully we will see more of that. We will see more of that in terms of our paradigms to look at who should be a member of the speech pathology audiology community as a professional of colleague, versus who should not. And what do we mean by standardization? What are we using as a way to base on standard? I'm not even 5 feet. And if you use a standard deviation, I am probably 3 standard deviation from the norm. But if you look at the group, the tribe that I came from, most of the women are my size. Okay, so these kinds of things, hopefully we can use diversity, multiplicity as a way to look at how we develop continuously these standards, so-called standards, or certain framework. Maybe framework is a better,
Framework is better. I
better
think.
word.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Thank you.
Any other changes that you'd like to see in our field?
Yvette, you go first.
Yeah, I mean, I think I really want us to move more toward a critical, framework. Some articles are coming out or people are doing that, questioning, the use of standardized norm reference assessments and whether or not they're really telling us what we want them to tell us or support. I want us to really move toward, I mean, I just said this already, so, I don't want to be a broken record, but toward more strength-based language, starting with like what we call ourselves.
Yeah, let's talk about,
and
because we
and
glossed over
start,
that earlier.
calling it, or even working with calling something a disorder. I mean,
Yeah.
really, I just think, that's, I also get really nitpicky about words, so I kind of spend a lot of time thinking about what words mean. And sometimes it probably isn't all that healthy, but I worry a lot about like what words am I using, what do they mean, and questioning. That's just part of my DNA, I guess. Yeah.
Well,
I think that's, yeah, fine. But I also want to question the use of words for example, the word disorder. I have now stopped for already at least a half a year or more the word disorders in ASD. I don't say ASD anymore. I say autistic people or the study of autism. Because I think, many of us, we have unique qualities that we may not be considered autistic, but we are unique in certain ways. So the word disorder gives it a very negative notion. So if we
Exactly.
want to look at strength, then autistic individuals are unique. So the word I like is unique more than,
I love that.
yeah.
And I'd like to see us start talking about language in that way, right?
Yeah.
Communication in that way.
Mhm.
And that's a big shift, right, for the discipline, because so much is, it's like it's baked into us from the time that you step into the program,
Mhm.
that there are these quote disorders that we need
Mhm.
to fix or work with, or
Mm.
but if we have a more social model of disability, there's no disorder, there's nothing inherently wrong with anyone, right? That there are issues in the environment or in the context that can be changed to help facilitate someone's communication. Looking at ways to do assessments that don't determine someone's disorder, but where are their strengths and how do they need support to be successful in a particular context, without it being called a disorder. So I think that just like we're moving away from it, with the autistic community, we need to be doing that with all the communities that we engage with as speech language clinicians and hearing clinicians.
I love.
Well, and the big challenge is also qualification for services. So it seems like, still using the disordered and the pathology model is often required in order to get services. So I don't know that that's a change within our field or within a change outside of our field.
I think it's both and, because I guess like to get reimbursed for services, you have to give some sort of label, but why is that? Right? So and I think at the state level, state level, there might be more opportunity, but if across the states, all speech language groups were working with their legislators to, have different ways that people can get reimbursed for services, that would put enough pressure nationally that others would follow, right? And I just think, so it's not something speech language can do alone, but we have to have these conversations and impress upon legislators and whoever writes the insurance or whoever, I don't understand it all, but to make some of those changes. And I think it's possible if the conversation, if the will was there.
Yeah, I used to work for the Children's Hospital, and also
Mhm.
I was in charge of Kaiser Permanente Medical Group. I
Oh, I
have
didn't
to
know that.
tell you, there is a medical model which is a reality for reimbursement. So you're right. So if you look at medical model, then a child who is developing language, developing speech is called apraxic for the medical model,
Mhm.
whether there is really apraxia or not seemed not to matter so much as long as you can give a term so that reimbursement can come. So at least that medical model needs to be looked at more carefully. And for those of us, hopefully, who have the opportunity to talk to legislatures, we want to let them know that, policies are made by people. And if we can look at the medical model and see how we can accommodate diversity, unique people, then services can be given to those with some needs. Yeah. The needs may not be a pathology. Okay. If you think ASD is a pathology, then you have the disorder and pathology model. But if you think autism is a human condition, this condition may require, in some cases, some medication, may require special this or that, then the policies will have to be there. Again, so the more we tell our stories, the more people tell their stories. I think we all should be heard and seen, and then we can make our cases.
Wow. Words matter.
Yes.
They
The
do.
way we phrase things matter.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we often live into the way we talk, right? If we're talking about clients, then we treat them like clients as opposed to partners. If we're talking about, I don't know, what's another
Patient.
word, but yeah, if we were talking about patients and we're treating them like patients as opposed to partners. So it's just like words matter. It does. It drive the way the words we use drive the way we behave. Frere, I think,
Really.
yeah, I think he would say that also the way you behave drives the words you use, right? I think he would say it that way too. But I think both. I'm not
Mhm.
saying that I'm not disagreeing with with Frere,
Mm.
but I think it would take both of those.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is really how speech language pathologists and audiologists, when we work with human communication, look at our own critical pedagogy,
Yeah.
our own critical
Yeah.
pedagogy, how we think. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Our words shape our thoughts, and our thoughts shape our actions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely. Well, we are coming up on our time. It's been so great to talk with you. But before we close, I would like to ask you if you have any advice for future clinicians or wanted to add anything about your hope for the future of our profession.
Excuse me.
So I want our professional fellows and colleagues to be very brave, to be very resilient, but more importantly, to be very vulnerable. Okay? Vulnerable. I would like them to be vulnerable, to be able to open up and just be themselves. Yeah.
I had something very similar in my mind. So, but I read an article recently introduction to a special issue. I think it was AJSL. No, it was seminars, I think. And Danny Scott, some of you may know her, quoted from Audre Lorde's Sister Outsider. And the part that she quoted starts off with, "Your silence will not protect you." And so what I want to say to the people coming up in the discipline, that our silence will not protect us, right? That we, as women, as people of color, of people who are neurodiverse, gender diverse, linguistically diverse, that our silence will not protect us. That we need to take action when and where it's needed. We need to speak up. And for people who can't speak for themselves, and we need to engage in daily struggle for equity and justice in the discipline. So you need to be brave to do all that.
Yeah,
Or
you
like
can
my
brave.
what
Yeah,
my
you need to be
mentor
brave. You need to be vulnerable. You need to raise your silent voices. And that-
exactly.
yes.
Yes. And
Which,
as my mentor Ida Stockman told me once, you have to have a strong constitution to do that. You just have to be able, ready.
Yvette,
Yes.
Ida is also my mentor. We've been mentored by the same.
Yes. Isn't that wonderful?
Greatness. Oh, Ida.
Greatness, I
Yes.
know.
Yeah.
Oh, well, we have someone from the audience in the chat also thanking you, especially for the book references. Thank you for being brave and vulnerable yourselves. I did have to think when you said that, Dr. Chung, it reminds me of the first story that you told, that when you thought to, way back when you were a little girl and you wanted to advocate for your friend's older sister. So that is something that you have done throughout your life.
Yeah.
Yes.
Every time I think about, look at a girl with a ribbon on her hair, I think about the sister, that she lost her ribbon right away. Her clothes were torn. So every time I look at a hair ribbon, I think about her and I advocate for her.
Beautiful.
Well, thank you both for sharing this time with us. We really appreciate your perspectives and reflecting on your career and reflecting on the evolution of multicultural issues in our field of speech and language sciences. I was going to say pathology, but I've been veering away from that word for a while, and this discussion has really resonated with me. So thank you very much. We really appreciate your time and sharing your legend with us.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you
Thank-
all.
Thank you. And thank you, Christina. I'm so excited to co-host with you. I really appreciate it.
Yes, of course. Thank you for inviting us.
All right. Well, thank you, Dr. Chung and Dr. Hyter. We really appreciate it.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye.
Take care.